Did I focus on the wrong toys at a recent toy show? Welcome to Pegwarmers. I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. I recently visited the York Toy Extravaganza with my friends Rose and Tony from RetroCon. After that show, they took me to a funky vintage shop, and I'm here to show you kind of the sights and sounds of the shows and my haul. The York Toy Extravaganza is a huge toy show held at the York Fairgrounds. It's basically like two giant halls connected with a lobby in the center. It is a show that features vintage action figures as well as a lot of die-cast cars and model kits and things like that. It definitely has an older vibe to it with like 50s sci-fi ray guns and die-cast cars and things like that, but also a lot of stuff for 80s and 90s collectors. I try to go to the show every year, and it's always a good time. In the stuff that I'm going to show you, there are things I photographed that I didn't even think about how much I really should have maybe focused on them. I'm going to show you my haul. I bought a lot of kind of oddball stuff, little one-off things here and there, but I didn't really focus hard on some lines that I kind of think now I want to complete. Whenever we go to this show, we always go into the hall on the left first. I don't know why, that's just the way we go. We always feel like that hall has a little bit more stuff than we want, even though one of our favorite vendors is always on the right. And first up, I saw a vendor who had a ton of boxed G.I. Joe stuff. Multiple Slaughter Marauder tanks, the Storm X-Wing chopper, Python Patrol Stun, which is a cool-looking vehicle, and the Desert Fox. This guy had a really nice display. He had tons of great stuff, including a boxed flag. Or a flag with box. I'm not actually sure which way that was. The flag is not as rare as it seemed when I was a kid. When I was collecting in the pre-internet age or even the early eBay age, I have seen a lot of flags in my lifetime for sale. It might be regionally. It might be East Coast. There are a lot more flags. I do understand if you live in the middle of the country, there just might not be flags around. But if you live in Pennsylvania or New Jersey, and you want a flag, just go to a toy show. There's probably one for sale. This vendor also had a carded Iceberg and a Battle Armor Cobra Commander. Both toys that I want to probably talk about sometime this year. Honestly, there was a lot of carded stuff throughout the show. This show also always has a lot of great stuff. So, the Toy Department, which is a toy store in Ohio, they come out to the York show. So, and they have high-end, really awesome stuff. And so knowing that they come, that always kind of elevates the game a little bit. You know there's going to be rare stuff here. A lot of vendors bring rare stuff, and I noticed a couple of them were vendors from shows in Ohio, which seems to be a hotbed for amazing collectible finds. An example of some of the high-end stuff, a Cave Turtle Mikey in box. Oh, this vendor had an impressive amount of glassware. Popeye, Popples, Superman. I have a bunch of the Star Wars glasses, and when I was a kid growing up, we had a whole bunch of like the McDonald's Land and Snoopy glasses. I have a soft spot in my heart for these pieces of glassware, but I try not to buy any other than the Star Wars ones, and at this point, I don't know which ones I have and which ones I don't have, so I pretty much just don't buy any of the glassware stuff anymore. Saw Meg from Bionic 6, she caught my eye. And this is one of those lines where I'm kind of kicking myself. I saw a ton of Bionic 6 stuff at this show, and it's expensive, but I really wish I would have looked at it closer and really thought about it closer. I did buy some Bionic 6, and I'll fill you in on that, but I really walked away from a lot of Bionic 6 stuff this day. And it's going to be one of my goals for 2024. I'm going to try and focus on Bionic 6. I'm trying to put together a list of things that I need for my collection. There's some stuff I'm trying to like fix up collections as I get them set up down here in the basement. So you'll see in my haul there's some vintage Star Wars figures that I decided to upgrade here. I upgraded my Lion-O last year and filled in some more holes in my vintage Thundercats. I'm trying to kind of like finish off some of these lines, even if I don't own everything, but because some of the stuff is just grail stuff that I may never own. But you know, the core stuff, the stuff that's not impossible to get, fill in some of the holes, get some of the accessories, and try and cross some stuff off my list. I also picked up a Serpentor cape last year, which was something off my 86 G.I. Joe accessory list that I needed. I was walking by, and this carded Silverhawk buzzsaw caught my eye, and then I noticed there's a broken Ninja Turtle carded next to him. This case of carded Star Wars guys kind of blew me away. Carded Star Wars isn't impossible to find, but it's hard to find it in nice condition sometimes. I have a handful of figures carded, but they're all from Return of the Jedi, which definitely is kind of the easiest era to get the stuff from. I don't know, I had to stop and take a look, and then the same table had vinyl Cape Jawas. I guess these are real. They're sealed in acrylic, they've been graded. I would be so nervous buying a vinyl Cape Jawa unless I found it in like a box that just came out of Grandma Betty's attic. Lots of carded Princess of Power and boxed Princess of Power things, including a boxed Claudine. I thought it was interesting when I looked at this stuff that Arrow's box and Storm's boxes are closed, but the later horses, like the crystal horses, have windows to show off the toy. I wonder if they realized that people weren't sure if it was a puzzle or a game versus like an actual like action figure accessory. Masters of the Universe was well known for having closed boxes with art for like big things like Castle Grayskull, but usually the smaller sets had windows, like Battle Cat and things like that. So it's an interesting thing with like its sister line here. So one vendor had a ton of carded Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. I gotta laugh at this soccer ref. I mean, I know they did a lot of goofy turtle alternate figures, but like them playing sports in sports uniforms, I don't know. The birthday clown one, there's some ones that I shake my head at. Boxed Mantech. You don't see Mantech ever, and then let alone boxed, man. This is what I'm talking about. York's got the weird stuff. Rock Lords, Terra Rock. I don't have a lot of Rock Lords. I have maybe 3 Rock Lords. Nugget being one of them, who I picked up not too long ago at a fairly recent, featured in a fairly recent video. But it's pretty funny. Like the whole Rock Lord concept and being part of GoBots is just an interesting topic. Like the simple mundane thing is like a tape deck that turns into a robot, or a soda can that turns into a Computer Warriors battle station. But a rock. I got a rock. But turns into a robot. And not everything at this show is old, because, man, I found some Gujitsu guys who, like, are clearance Gujitsu guys. I saw a tub of Willow figures, made me think back to the old Farpoint Toys episode when Penelope showed off her Willow collection. Could have picked up some cheap figures there. All I have are the couple I had as a kid. There was a wall of pink. Barbie movie was a little bit fresher a couple months back when I went to this show. But I think the Barbie vendors have seen a boom, and so you see a lot more of them at toy shows, and this vendor had quite a display. I saw a really cool set of He-Man glasses, and I know I said I'm like not really collecting glassware. They were really expensive though, but I did snap a couple pictures because they're pretty neat. Tony's lone purchase of the day was some Toxic Crusader candy heads from our buddy Chris Lamont. He had a full case that he was breaking up into sets and selling off. They're pretty neat. I thought about it. I don't really have that many Toxic Crusader figures. I have a handful of the original line and some of the new Ultimates figures. But to dive into the ancillary merchandise for that line when I'm not really like a huge complete collector on it, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, like if those are kind of the lines I collect a lot of the ancillary stuff for. Then I ran into more Bionic 6. Carded Bionic 6, Meg, Jack, Bungie. Oof, I need Bungie. Bungie is one of the guys I'm looking for my collection. And, I probably wouldn't buy him carded. It's funny, though, there's this fair amount of figures in my collection for Bionic 6 that I bought carded and took off the bubble. You used to be able to find inexpensive Bionic 6 figures, like, on mangled cards. Not, like, dirt cheap, but, the price I was willing to pop them off the card. I don't see that anymore. And Bionic 6 is hard to collect loose because the paint gets chipped off them so easy. The last thing I spotted while we were at the York Toy Show that I thought was worth taking a picture of was this custom Han Solo. Did someone take a vintage Kenner Han Solo and try and make it look like Solo, a Star Wars story? That's what I saw when I looked at it. After the York Show, Rose and Tony and I went to lunch, and then they took me to American Daydream, a really cool vintage shop. I got this Muscle Man sticker from there. Daydream was a really neat store. It's like an old building, like a barn almost kind of looking building with a display window they had stuff set up in. They had a big stormtrooper out front, Bob's Big Boy out front. I like the place already, and I haven't even stepped foot inside. First thing I see is like a train set display, but it's full of monsters in my pocket, and I love monsters in my pockets. There's not really anything I'm looking for too much from that line, unless they're really rare stuff, but they just looked great all up there. All the Dayglow colors really makes me want to get my Monster in My Pocket stuff on display. Turn around, and there's a display case of 80s toys. Ninja Turtles, Masters of the Universe, Ghostbusters, all good stuff here. I spied a Randor cape. On Randor himself. There were a couple of the tie-in comic books for toy lines like Shogun Warriors and Sectars. Always like seeing that kind of stuff. They had the pizza thrower, one of the funniest turtle weapons. Did you guys know that they retooled the pizza thrower as a toy for Chicken Run, and it's like a pot pie thrower for the crazy bad guy people? I kind of want that toy, or like the front panel of the box, because it's a retool of a Ninja Turtle toy, and that doesn't happen a whole lot, especially for like some other movie. Like there was a little bit of overlap between Ninja Turtles and Toxic Crusaders, mostly Toxic Crusader stuff getting released for Turtles. But a Turtles thing being used for another movie like decades later is hilarious. And more Bionic 6, and I didn't buy anything at American Dream. I think I had kind of spent my budget at the toy show, and I wasn't really thinking. And the prices were high, because it's one of those situations where, retail store, they got to pay rent, so the stuff, the markup on the toys got to be there, right? But they had Bungie, they had IQ. Both of them are characters that I need for my collection. They had the card backs. I don't know. I probably shouldn't have walked away. There was a really cool Rainbow Bright coat rack there that had like a height measurement chart on it. Rose and I were enjoying that. There was also a whole display case with some of the more girly stuff. Bunch of Rainbow Bright, Care Bears. Just a really nice selection. And the colors in this downstairs room just were like, oof, Dayglow, all kinds of fun stuff. And it was well lit for being like a vintage shop. They had a section with vinyl and books. Then we went upstairs, and there was a whole bunch of like VHS tapes and baggied action figures, and we sifted through some of that stuff. Tony's lone purchase there at Daydream was the Sectars figure, one of the new Sectar figures from Nacelle. Stellara, the unreleased female figure from the vintage line, who's been brought to toy form finally. Alright, so what did I pick up at the show? What did I spend my toy show budget on that kept me from considering buying Bionic 6 figures at American Daydream? Well, first thing I bought was a G.I. Joe coloring book. I am 99% sure I don't have this already. I might kick myself. I may have it. This looks like it was $5 at the show. It was $1.68 and marked down to 94 cents at Kmart years ago. This has Rock and Roll and sort of an unknown character, possibly Scoop, I don't know, on the front there. The other characters in some weird coloring. The artwork in this book is not perfect, and as I looked through it, it seemed really weird to me, the mix of characters. One, a lot of them are wearing scuba suits similar to the old Sunbow cartoon, but then I noticed that there were a lot of characters in here, like older Cobra characters. There's Battle Armor Cobra Commander, like Crimson Guards and things like that just didn't seem like they would be on store shelves anymore. But what I didn't think about the fact is this is the era of Python Patrol, so a lot of those Cobra figures were actually available. They just weren't in their normal colors. Some of this stuff, man, like, look at that camo on Recoil. Is there an army of DJs? One of them might be Scoop. Out of the whole book, only one page was colored in. The kid did a pretty good job on Countdown. I recently did an episode on Cops and Crooks, and I did pick up 2 Cops and Crooks figures while I was at the show. I don't know if these were super smart purchases, but they were pretty inexpensive, so I felt like I couldn't leave them behind. I grabbed a Long Arm. He's in nice shape. He doesn't seem to have any paint rub on his hair, so I figured I would check him out, see if he was nicer than the one in my collection. I also picked up Nunchuck. He does have a broken waist. I think I upgraded my nunchuck, but at one point I definitely had a pretty beat up version of him that was kind of loose in a lot of his joints. So again, I grabbed him because he was inexpensive, and I wanted to see if I needed him to like upgrade some of the parts on my figure to make mine nicer. I did a lot of upgrading at this show, not really buying new stuff. Visionaries is a line that I have been collecting for a while, but not with any real regularity or any real focus. I don't even really know all the guys I have. This one happened to have 2 accessories and a good chest decal, so I grabbed him. I'm pretty sure I don't have him, but if I do have him, with the accessories and stuff, he's probably an upgrade. Rambo. I didn't have either version of Rambo. I kind of like this one with the hoodie on. I have a few of the bad guys from the Rambo toy line, but I'm pretty sure I don't have an actual Rambo figure. And I've always preferred the hoodie version, because it definitely ties it back to the cartoon, and I just think it's kind of extra funny. I bought the gun to the G.I. Joe Crossfire. I was looking around through a guy's booth. He kind of made a comment that he would give me deals on stuff, so I kind of looked a little extra harder. He had a lot of parts, but I wasn't really sure what I'm looking for. But I would really like to get a Crossfire, the RC car, to the G.I. Joe toy line. And so I do sometimes pick up accessories when I find them, because I may end up not being able to get a complete one. I may have to kind of build it. So I got a pretty good deal on the gun. It doesn't have the mount part, but these barrels are pretty easy to break. So and even the 4 handles on the back. So I was happy to grab that. I'm a sucker for Snaggletooth. So if he's under $5, I often grab him, and this one was in really nice shape. And on that vein, I did pick up several Kenner figures. I'd actually just recently worked on my Kenner Star Wars display here in the basement, so I really kind of had looked over that toy line recently, kind of examined my stuff, and saw where some of the weak points were. I picked up a really nice AT-AT driver with nice tight joints. I have 2 of him. I do like to army build a little bit in that Kenner line, but one of mine is super floppy and falls down all the time. So I wanted to have a nice one who could stand on display with the other figures, and the floppy one might go in my beater AT-AT and just stay seated. Picked up a pretty nice, clean Snowtrooper. Obviously, he doesn't have his skirt piece. I don't have a skirt piece for one of them. I don't think I've ever seen a skirt piece for one of them on one that wasn't like being sold complete in acrylic kind of thing. Like, I just don't find them in Darth Vader cases full of figures. But I do have a gun for him. And one of mine is pretty beat and or pretty yellow, so figured I'd upgrade. I also noticed my vintage Bespin Luke Skywalker is not in great shape. I was super proud to get him when I did. When I was in middle school or high school, I traded a complete Ecto-1 that I had since I was a child to a toy vendor that I bought a lot of stuff off of for a complete Bespin Luke Skywalker, and it was the first complete, or maybe the second complete vintage Star Wars figure I ever owned. I had maybe a Gamorrean Guard axe or something like that. I got into Star Wars at the wrong time, started buying the stuff secondhand completely after it had just left retail. I probably got into it in the late 80s, and it had been in stores up to the mid 80s. So everything I had as a kid was pretty beat and missing stuff. I used to just use G.I. Joe accessories and toothpicks and things like that as accessories. Well, I'm really proud of having in my journey as a collector. That was a big moment for me. I think it's time to upgrade him because this one is so clean and so nice moving at the joints and stuff. I think the other one might finally go. I picked up the Penguin's plane. I did 2 episodes on Batman and Batman Returns toys with Tony from Hack the Movies. I didn't have this at the time we did it, but it is a funny toy. It's a umbrella-shaped plane that has umbrella bombs on the ends of the wings. It's got little laser cannons underneath like skids. It has some sort of a air feature. I don't know if it shoots a dart or if it's supposed to squirt water. I would need to look up the vehicle and see what the features were online. But I finally got this. It's a goofy toy for a goofy action figure. That penguin figure doesn't look like Danny DeVito at all. I needed to get this, and there was a vendor. I'm telling you, man, most of the people at York are career toy vendors. Stuff, is normal priced, right? The value of things. But there's also people there that are given deals. And there was a guy who had boxes and boxes of stuff, selling things cheap. Some of the Star Wars guys I got off of him. He had, like, accessories for G.I. Joe vehicles. Like, he had stripped down vehicles that weren't complete, I guess, and was selling parts cheap. And I got this for, like, $2. For $1, I got this fin and gun to the Vector from Battle Force 2000, the jet from Battle Force 2000, the best vehicle from Battle Force 2000. I have one in my collection that was my childhood best friend's, and I've been slowly trying to, like, repair those vehicles. So my buddy's Vector had one broken gun, and the other day I noticed the good gun, one of the tabs on it broke off. So I really need 2 of these guns. So I grabbed this one to help start to fix that up. And, $1. Like, it's great. And I know you go to Joe Fest and there are vendors that sell tons of parts and give you good prices, but like a local show for me, it's great to be able to really dig through some bins and find some stuff I actually needed. And one of my biggest problems is I usually just don't know what I need unless I've recently looked at items in my collection and been like, oh yeah, let me identify these things. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to work on here this year is identify some of the things I need to get. I have a list of G.I. Joe accessories, and when I take it to shows, it's helpful, and when I leave it at home, it doesn't help me at all. I probably should digitize it. The last big purchase I made, and it ties into my whole Bionic 6 thing, my buddy Trick Treat, he is a guy that I have known for years through Rose and Tony and through RetroCon. Really good guy. He is often a vendor at the York show because he kind of lives out that area. And he had recently found some Bionic 6 figures at a yard sale, and he was selling them at the show. Gave me a great deal on them. Unfortunately, there's not really too many people in this lot that I don't have, but I did buy them to see if any of them were in better shape than the ones I have. So like I said, I'm not gaining Bungie or anything like that, but there might be some stuff in here that's still good for my collection. First up, and probably worst off, is Meg. She does have a broken arm, so there's not much I can do about that. She's riveted together. She isn't screwed together in the back. So even if I wanted to switch an arm, I don't know if I could. And she does have some paint rub. But I bought these guys as a lot, and Trick gave me a great deal. The Glove, he's one of the bad guys. His arms are a little bit loose, but not too bad. His paint is in great shape. Like, this figure is not been played hard with at all. So that's a big find for Bionic 6 collector. We've got the Mechanic, who was one of my all-time favorite figures from this line as a kid. Just a big, beefy dude. He's kind of a dummy, but awesome in a fight. My friend growing up had this figure, and I loved playing with him. And this figure's not in too bad a shape. A little chip on the back, but otherwise in pretty good shape. Maybe a couple chips on his toes, but a pretty nice figure. So again, I want to compare this to the one in my collection. We've got Jack, the dad. Nice paint on his chest. A little bit of rubs on the back, but I'm pretty sure mine is beat. So this guy may definitely be an upgrade for my collection. One of the reasons that I wanted to grab this lot. The last figure I brought off Trick was Dr. Scarab. And this figure often yellows and looks terrible. Often also gets lots of paint chips on him. This one is not perfect again, but in pretty nice shape. Very happy to have him. Can't wait to compare him to the figure in my collection and see if he's better. So here's my thoughts, guys. One, in the comments down below, let me know if you want to see an episode of what's in my Bionic 6 collection and how these guys compare, and whether these guys are replacing my collection, the figures in my collection, or not being an upgrade. Two, should I go back to American Daydream? Should I go out there and do some shopping, plan to spend a little bit of money and get a couple of these Bionic 6 characters I need? If they're still there, they could have sold. You never know. Should I just continue the hunt? I am a marathon collector. I do drop a lot of money on new releases and pre-orders, but when it comes to vintage stuff, I've been collecting vintage toys for as long as I can remember, and so I've never been one to race to get all the really rare and expensive stuff and go crazy. I just wait to find it. Unfortunately, the market for vintage stuff has gone up to the point where I don't find stuff as often, and when I do find it, it's high prices now. Whereas when I was a kid, and when I was in college, and when I was a young collector, I stumbled on stuff cheap a lot. That world doesn't really exist anymore. So sometimes I do have to kind of like remember that and be like, yeah, just because I got most of this collection for, $5 or $6 a piece, that's not going to be the way it is anymore. And maybe paying $50 for a figure isn't so outlandish. Even if it is this little tiny thing, I pay that for a Super 7 figure. Yeah, they're big and super detailed and whatever, but I also love vintage stuff, and it's harder to find, and it's rare. So maybe I shouldn't get all like, I don't know if I want to spend the money when I see that stuff. So, I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. I am trying to put together a list, and I would like to put out an episode early in 2024 of like some of the things I'm on the hunt for. And I did mention Bionic 6 stuff, some of the things I'm missing. I do need to get a new Xandar. When I did the 1986 episode recently, his rubber band popped. His rubber band was in bad shape, but he doesn't come apart like a traditional G.I. Joe figure, so I would like to replace him before I try to cut him open and do the O-ring replacement. I've never cut open one of the Zartan family people. I have a backup Zartan and a backup Zorana, although my two Zoranas are the two different versions, so it's not truly a backup. But I want to get a new Xandar, and then I might try to repair that one. So, yeah, trying to like fill holes in my collection this year, trying to get the stuff on display better down here. Those are some of my goals. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Please go back and check out some of the old videos if you're new here. And thanks for hanging on the peg with me.